Sub versus dub. Which one is the better one for anime? Whoa! Okay, yeah, you saw the title of this video. Obviously, you know what this topic is about. It's quite possibly one of the most debated topics in anime in general, of which one is better, what people call sub or the dub versions of anime. Now, if you want the short version of this video, I'm gonna take the Swiss route and just say that I'm neutral about it. So, thanks for watching. But now, if you want to stay for the long version of this video and this answer, thanks for sticking around. Hi, welcome to the channel. Yeah, I would still say that I'm neutral about it, with a slight preference towards the sub, or if we want to get more technical here, Japanese dub. Now hold on just a second, that doesn't mean that I'm a weeb or anything like that. I'm Asian, so I think that automatically disqualifies me from being a weeb, so stop it. Stop. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I would prefer some Japanese dub over the English, and there's many different reasons for that, but overall I'm pretty neutral about it because there are some shows that I would say that are much better in the English dub than it is for the Japanese dub. So one of the main reasons why I think the Japanese dub is slightly more preferable over the English dub is simply because, I mean, anime is made in Japan. Like, that's why all the series are dubbed in Japanese first and then English. Like, very simple as that, right? But the writing is all structured around Japanese culture, and most of the time a lot of the sayings are in, well, obviously Japan. You see, a lot of jokes and gags in anime, such as, you know, falling over or like nosebleeds coming out when you see something erotic, you know, that has come with Japanese humor in mind. And mind you, back then, you know, in the early 2000s or even before COVID, anime was not as big of a phenomenon as it was today. So yeah, with the lack of popularity, there were not enough voice actors who were interested in enough projects to voice anime, and also some of the jokes and some of these gags or just cultural references in general don't really transfer over well into English dub as they do in Japanese dub. So yeah, this is why I kind of have this slight preference over English dub. And also it's because, as someone who is Asian as well, there are words in our language that do not have a direct translation over to the English version. And also just grammatical structures and all that, it's kind of hard to translate over in its true form, I would say. So here's a quick little lesson in Asian languages, I guess, pertaining mostly to Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. That's mainly all I know, and I rarely know Japanese because I'm Korean. So but yeah, the lesson is that, as many people know, that there are very different grammatical structures as well for these Asian languages compared to English. In English, there really isn't a formal version and an informal version, unless you use like slang, but this is not counting slang, because slang is basically just made up words, essentially. Even though all words are made up. Am I stealing this joke? But yeah, English technically doesn't have an informal and formal way unless you add like sir at the end of your sentence there, right? So a lot of these examples I'm going to be using are going to be Korean because, again, I am Korean. But, you know, this could pertain to the other Asian languages of the big three, I guess. So yeah, with Korean, if you're speaking to a friend or something like that, or someone younger than you would speak in a more casual, informal tone. And then when you're speaking to a complete stranger or to someone who's older than you or relatives or someone who is higher above you in the corporate ladder or something like that, you would use the formal tone. Now, the simplest way to explain the difference here is it's kind of similar to what I just said about English, where like in English you would add like sir, ma'am, or whatever like that. In Korean, you would mostly end your sentences with yo. No, not yo, it's yo. But what makes a huge difference is that sometimes we change up the entire structure of a word in general. Like I said before, in English, most of the time you would just like change the tone of things or the way you say it, or just adding in like a sir there. But in Korean, you kind of change up how the word is made, essentially. Like, here's an example. If you're to tell your friend or like your younger sibling to come here, you would say illo wa. Illo, right? As simple as that, right? But then when you're talking to a complete stranger or to like someone older than you, and you tell them to come here, you would say illo oseyo. We kind of just, you know, changed up the word in general for that. I don't know if that serves as a point, but any fellow Koreans or Asians out there, can you help me prove my point if that works? But yeah, going back to the main point of this video, the reason why I say that, you know, Japanese dub is slightly better is because, yeah, it's kind of hard to translate that over to English without having to sound cringe or something like that. Like another example I would give is that, like, you know, in America, you would call your teacher like Mr. or Mrs. and then their last name, right? And they still do the same thing in anime where it's like, you know, last name sensei, like that. But when it comes to adults, you know, in America, you would just say Mr. or Mrs. whoever, right? Or like if you're talking to your boss or something like that, right? But in Japanese, they would add at the end of the word san, you know, which is basically their version of also saying Mr., I guess. But san could also just like be used in many different other contexts. I'm not too sure. Again, I have not studied Japanese before. I only know the cringe terms like oni-chan. But yeah, it's kind of, so yeah, there's all these different phrases and terms that like kind of are hard to translate over into English. So that's like one of the reasons. I guess like another example would be like, you know, when like Japanese characters go like eh, like that as like a shock response, but then in like the English version you just go like what, like that. I feel like it doesn't really work in that kind of context. It sounds just more cringe overall rather than just like, you know, eh, like that. It's funnier in their native language. But yeah, that's kind of like the main reason why I think that Japanese dub is better, because it's their native language. It kind of translates over a lot easier than it does in English. But I will give credits to the English dub. As anime has gotten more popular over the years, where, you know, now it's considered normal to watch anime rather than, you know, being a nerd or something like that. It's really, I would say that a lot more people, especially voice actors and talents, are a lot more interested in taking up the voice role of anime characters. I guess what I can also give props to in the English dub is that they started adding in like American humor, so like memes and all that, as cringe as it sounds, but, you know, it's stuff that, you know, Japanese people wouldn't understand. It's the same way where we don't understand certain gags in the original Japanese. We've added our own bit of culture into the different shows. So that's what I really enjoy about modern anime dubbing, and I find it kind of funny overall. Another thing that I do think that the English dub beats out over the Japanese dub on is screams, I would say, and low voice characters. And this is mainly because you rarely hear Japanese people sounding like having a very rich, deep tone overall. Like the lowest they can go is probably like Morgan Freeman, right? That's the lowest tone that I've heard from a Japanese person. I've never heard anyone, you know, talk like Duke Nukem or Dick Kickem. But yeah, if we were to pull out one of the easiest examples of, you know, anime screaming, it'd obviously be Goku, because, you know, Dragon Ball always has screams, and he's one of the most iconic characters out there he is the most iconic character out there in anime. So yeah. But we can see clear distinctions between Masako Nozawa, who is the Japanese voice actress for Goku, and Sean Schemmel, who is the English voice actor for Goku. Now, listen to the different screams here. So if you listen to Nozawa-san's version of like Goku screaming or charging up his ki, it's a lot higher in pitch, and well, that's also mainly because females can go higher than males in terms of voice pitch, but they can't go as low as males can, scientifically speaking, on average, I would say. I don't think I can beat some woman though in low tones. But yeah, in a situation like this, it's like very more high pitched and shrilly. But when you listen to Sean Schemmel, you notice the deep growl and how much more intense that this kind of emotion is and the charging up is, you know, compared to the Japanese voice. So that's what I think English voice actors do pretty well, is that they bring out like better intense rage moments and screaming overall. I think they do much better in that aspect for male characters most of the time compared to the Japanese voice actors. One more thing I think that the English dub does a lot better compared to Japanese dub is also based on the setting of the anime. If the anime is not set in Japan, excluding isekai, because somehow they still tend to make medieval Europe style fantasy places Japanese somehow, Konosuba, that's an example I would say. But yeah, they managed to turn it more Japanese, so I'm not going to count isekais, but I will count, you know, other anime where the original setting is not Japan at all. And it may be fictitious overall because again, it is anime, but they do base it off of, you know, real European countries. A great example where English dub is a lot better because of the setting of the anime is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I'm sorry, I don't really enjoy 2003 FMA better than Brotherhood. I'm sorry to the 2003 fans. But the main reason why I think that the English dub is a lot better is because, well, one, they also had really good voice actors in that series, but also the setting is in their version of Germany. I say Germany because, well, their leader is called the Führer, and I feel like saying Führer is a lot better than saying it, whatever they say in the Japanese dub. I haven't watched in the Japanese. I've only watched clips of the Japanese dub, but just bear that in mind, so you could take my opinion with a grain of salt as well. I feel like the pronunciation of some of the words like Ishval and, you know, the other sins and all that, they really worked well better than they do in the Japanese dub. And the setting does really help it because it is in Europe, so it feels more natural for English to be more present there rather than in Japan. So yeah, while the art style is, you know, very Japanese because again, it is anime, I feel like it still works better in the English dub because of the setting overall. Another great example would be Code Geass. And yes, while most of it does take place in Area 11, which is Japan, the main theme around it is Europe because the British are the ones that took over Japan. But yeah, since the whole setting is centered around English people, and also a lot of the names are based off European names, I think that having it in an English dub is a lot better than just doing it in the Japanese dub. Because with the Japanese dub, like a name like Schneisel doesn't work as well, I would say, because it'd be Schneisel, which I don't know, it sounds cringy to me, but Schneisel in just regular plain English just sounds a lot better to me. This is just all my bias, but personally speaking, I think the context and certain emotions do better in the English dub. But overall, a majority of Japanese anime is centered in Japan and their jokes and what happens there and all the context of, like, slice of life is a huge genre. And yeah, making it in Japanese makes a lot more sense than to me in English because again, it's all about the culture, where it's from and all that. But I've ranted here and there, and overall, I still prefer, you know, Japanese dub, but I still do think that English dub has improved throughout the years. And to finish the video off, I can actually give some recommendations on which anime that I do prefer in the English dub. So here's this list coming up now. Great. So yeah, that's my video. I keep fucking burping in these videos. So yeah, that's my video. Let me know what you guys think about this topic overall. Do you guys prefer the Japanese dub or do you guys prefer the English dub? Or do you have preferences for certain anime overall? And yeah, just let me know in the comments what you think about my thinking overall. This was all off script, so I just said what was off the top of my head. So hopefully I didn't sound like an idiot to you guys. But in the meantime, that's all I have. Peace.